Hi everyone, it's me again, same outfit, same day, kicking these videos out. I wanted to introduce you to the books I read in July. So I started off with the book Intrusion, or actually because I read this in French it'd be Intrusion by Natsuo Kirino. And this book is a book that I'm a little frustrated with. And I'm not frustrated with the book, I'm frustrated with the marketing, because the back of the book says that this is a thriller. It is not. It's not a thriller. It has nothing to do with thrillers. It's not thrilling. It's none of those things. I hate when marketing does this because it dampens, it changes your experience with the book. So I went into this book expecting a thriller. So when there was nothing going on, it made the book feel very boring, which sucks because if I hadn't had that expectation, the book in itself is actually quite good. It's very subdued, but basically, so this book is about our main character, Tamaki, and she is an author who has decided that for her next book, she is going to write about a character from another book. And that character is the character of O, this mysterious woman that the author had an affair with. And he wrote a book about his affair with this O, and how he sort of breaks off the affair to sort of reunite with his wife. And so Tamaki, the author, wants to find out who O is, because this book that the author had written was almost vicious. It was very cruel, it was very vicious, because he really elaborates on this love affair, which in a book that his wife can read, that he's basically still married to. So it's a really sort of like cruel experience for the wife. And so Tamaki, as she researches this book and she starts to interview people from the book, she starts to learn about this author in the background. And so as she gets closer and closer to finding out who this character O is, she sort of intertwines that with her own experiences and love and affairs and things like that, because she's also involved in her own affair. And this book, it's very frustrating because it's very true in the sense that it really depicts marriages in Japanese society very well, in the sense that no matter what happens, the mistress is always the villain and the man always wins. And so this book is very, very cruel. So Natsuo Kirino is it's quite a very feminist author, and she very often talks about the conditions of women within Japanese society. And so her look at that in this book is actually quite phenomenal. But again, because I thought this was a thriller, I was kind of bored, but I shouldn't have been. So it's very frustrating, it's very annoying. And it's one of those things where I looked at other reviewers from people who read this, and they said the exact same thing. They were disappointed because it wasn't a thrilling book. Well, guess what? It's not a thriller, so that's why it's not thrilling. So I did enjoy this, but I really hate the marketing. Really, 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 really hate the marketing. So this book has not actually been translated in English, but if you are going to read this in French, just know it's not a thriller. There we go. Ending with that. So the next book I read is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This book I really enjoyed. It's about, so I'm just going to get into it. It's about Vanessa, who has an affair with her teacher when she's 15 years old. Her teacher is like 42. She's 15. They have an affair when she's in boarding school. And she basically considered themselves the couple, them and her teacher. She considered them to be in love. She's very, very much convinced that this was a relationship from love. However, when we jump to present day, there has been an article posted about how a former student of his is accusing him of rape. Because she also had well, she might have had relations with this teacher but Vanessa herself doesn't know how far it went. So we explore Vanessa as she tries to grapple with the idea of, was this rape? Did he take advantage of me? Because she's convinced that it was a relationship of love. She never said no. She consented to everything. And so it really delves into that very interesting idea of, what's the line? So if you're 15 and you're a man who's 20 years older than you, it's bad. But if you're 19 and you're a man 20 years older than you, that's okay, just because you've passed this imaginary line of 18. So she discusses that quite a bit in this book, and it's very, very good. I kind of wish the author had pushed the book a little further, in the sense that it's quite obvious in the book that it was actually it wasn't a relationship of love, that the teacher had forced her to do things that she didn't want to do and she wasn't ready to do. I think it could have been even more fascinating if that line had been blurred, blurred just a little bit more, to where you as a reader might think, oh, well, maybe this could be considered love. I say this because, I think in the back of my mind, a story like the president of France right now, Macron. Macron is very famous. Well, yes, he's the president of France, so he's famous for that. But he's also famous for the fact that his wife was his former teacher. And they got married. She's significantly older than him, but the question is, how far had they taken their relationship while he was still a minor? They insist nothing had happened, that they didn't do anything until, it was, until he was the age of consent. But, for them, it was a very successful love story. So I think it could have been even more interesting. This book is perfectly good the way it is, but I think it actually could have been even more interesting if the author had blurred the line just a smidge more, just to make the reader feel like a little bit more uncertain about the situation. Because it is much more clear that, in fact, Vanessa was taken advantage of. I also want to commend the writing in two styles. One, because this is a contemporary book, I think it so very well uses pop culture and modern technology in the book. So you get references to Britney Spears, you get references to things that take place back in the 90s, and then the author actively checks Facebook and uses Google to look up her teacher. And I think it's very commendable in this book because it feels so smooth. It's not forced. It's not pop references for the sake of putting in a pop reference. It feels very natural to really sort of describe how much of a juvenile Vanessa was. So I really want to commend that, because there are other books that I've read where it's just like, I think you're kind of pushing on the pop references. And then the next thing I want to laud is the sex scenes. Because I tend to read older books don't always have very clear defined sex scenes. A lot of times it's very like, oh, the two found themselves, tussled in a barrel of hay and they came out, and that's it. There's no, but here you get, you get the penetration, you get the oral stimulation, you get full-on sex scenes, and it's written so well and so naturally, and nothing feels forced, and it's so realistic. This is what sex is. This is real sex. And she writes that so well, because I think it's in Severance, which is a book I really, really liked, and it's the dystopian book that's very popular on BookTube these days. I read that I think 2 years ago when it came out, and there were like 2 sex scenes that just came out of nowhere. They were so unnecessary, and at one point the character describes her boyfriend's penis. She compares it to the size of Arnold Schwarzenegger. She doesn't compare it to the penis of Arnold Schwarzenegger. She compares it to Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I'm just like, I don't know, that was kind of stupid, to be honest. So, I don't know, like, there's a lot of modern books that really try to force these sex scenes to be shocking and to be, you know, like, in your face and like, oh, this is contemporary fiction. And it's unnecessary. There's just no need for it. It does nothing for the narrative. And it just sounds silly, to be honest. But this book does it very, very well. So that's My Dark Vanessa. So after My Dark Vanessa, I read that, I finished at the very end of the month, and then I had 3 days left and was like, all right, hey, I can fit in another book. So I decided to read Dandelions by Yasunari Kawabata. And Kawabata is one of the literary greats of Japan. He won the Nobel Prize for Literature. He is one of the greats. He's prized for his gentle and lyrical prose about the quiet aspect of Japanese society. And he is an author I read a long time ago. I read one book by him a long time ago. And I was just, you know, I was like, you know, it kind of difficult to read in the sense that it's very slow. Very slow, uber quiet, nothing happens, which is fine. I'm perfectly fine with books that where nothing happens, but there still needs to be a little something more. There needs to be something else to grab my interest. But, well, not but, we'll get to the but for now, so he's an author that when people ask me, as someone who reads a lot of Japanese literature, when people ask me for recommendations for Japanese literature, I never recommend Kawabata. Never. Don't read him. I don't suggest him, not unless you are a die-hard fan of not just Japanese literature, but Japanese literature from back in the day. So maybe even if you're more of a scholar, I don't recommend this author. But because it's been so long, I decided to read this for myself, to try him again. Because now, well, I'm older, I have more experience, more life experience, but I also have more Japan experience. So I wanted to try again. And then it was so boring. So boring. Oh my gosh. It was just... So the book is about a mother who takes her daughter Ineko to a mental clinic with the lover of her daughter, the man who wants to marry her daughter. And why? Well, basically Ineko has suddenly lost the ability to actually see her fiance. What does that mean? When her fiancés, when they're together, it's like his face it's not there. She can feel him, she can touch him, she's aware that he's there, but she visually cannot see him. And so they put her in a mental clinic to see if it's some sort of, you know, mental illness to get her well. And we never talk with Ineko. The book is basically revolves around the mother and her daughter's semi-fiance and their discussion about Ineko. And it's so boring. And the conversation it's mostly dialogue with, you know, very nice description in between, but it is mostly focused on the dialogue between these two. And the way it just constantly just goes in circles, and it's consistently just contradictory. You're like, oh, you said that? No, I didn't say that. Ah, yes, but you did say that. Well, yes, maybe I did say that, but that's not what I meant. You know, it's just this constant back and forth, always constantly going back in circles. And to be honest, by the end of the book, I don't know what I read. I don't know. I read an actual literary review of the book, and that person got a lot more out of this than I did. When I read their review, I'm like, oh, okay, I can see it. But here the Paris review says lusciously peculiar. I think that means so boring, but I didn't really get it. So to make it seem like I got it, I'm just gonna say it's lusciously peculiar, because that's kind of what it is. So, I mean, the interesting fact is that this book was Kawabata's very last book that he was not published, but that he was writing before he committed suicide, because this was actually unfinished. It does come to a fairly clean ending, but it's boring. That's it, it's boring, whatever. Last, as I go off camera to show you, I read the entire series of Fantasista. Yay! So it's 13 volumes in this version. It was originally 25 volumes in the original versions, but these are a lot smaller, a lot shorter, and I'm going to put them down because they're also a lot heavier. A lot heavier because the pages are a lot thicker and a lot glossier. because these are like sort of like almost like more collectible versions of original series. But yeah, I read the entire thing this month, and it was so much fun. So it's just Sakamoto Teppei, who grew up on an island with his sister, and his sister taught him soccer. But she left the island before him and went towards Tokyo to become a coach because she has a physical heart condition where she can't play soccer herself. So she decides to become a coach, and she calls him to Tokyo. And he comes to Tokyo, and he joins the soccer team, and he's, you know, he's so technically gifted because, you know, on this island he's always been playing by himself. So all he had to do all day was work on his technique. And he immediately gets scouted by an Italian scout, but decides not to go to Italy because he wants to help his sister out and this high school team, and he makes friends with the team. But you know, it's absurd because like within 6 months, immediately upon coming to Tokyo, he was scouted by the Italian scout, but then he also becomes like part of the Japanese youth team, and he's learning how to play as a team because being on the island, he's never actually played on a soccer team. He's only played by himself. So it's really absurd because, you know, I've been playing soccer all my life. Soccer's in my blood. I love it. It's my passion. And you're not going to become, you know, national youth team if you've never played on an actual soccer team with the team. It's just absurd. But that's what I love about soccer manga, because at the end of the day, it's like every single different series, every author has his own take, his own style, his own story, his own humor, and I really like the humor in this. And I did really like this. I think I like the second part better. So the first part is him, you know, learning how to play as a team and being part of the youth team. And then the second part, he actually does go to Italy, and it's him sort of, you know, becoming a fantasista, which is Italian word for basically, you know, a technician. This is the very precise technicians in soccer who just have a view of the soccer field where they can just, you know, just create amazing gameplay, but also just take the ball straight to the goal and just create these amazing goals. So yeah, that was my reading month. It was super fun. I haven't read any manga this year, well, other than the Yakuza. So basically, I start reading manga in the summer. It's usually when I get into the Japanese mood. But before that, I hadn't read any manga all year, so it was nice to get it back into that. Plus, it was a soccer manga. And yeah, so I'm excited to see what August brings me. It's always a surprise. I'm thinking I might read some shoujo manga, but I don't know. We'll see. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.